Sage Wanderer here, coming at you from my shotgun shack in the Texas Outback. Hey, I wanted to talk today about the press, specifically the mainstream media, and how what is going on with them right now could give you a clue as to where we are in this civil war. So, the mainstream media, once upon a time, considered themselves objective or impartial, and they would report on things from a third-party, viewer voyeuristic perspective. In other words, they would stand by the sidelines and not have an opinion as to the morality of what is going on in a certain situation, but would more like focus directly on what is happening and describing it to you so that they could be your eyes and your ears in the field, and they would leave the morality decision up to the viewer to decide. Follow me? So, once upon a time, journalists saw themselves as simply an extension of our eyes and our ears, bringing us the news that we could not go out and collect ourselves. And for that, we saw it as a service, and therefore we paid them a fee in the form of loyalty, in the form of advertisement, right? And so, and recognition and trust. You know, I kind of trusted Walter Cronkite. I know some people are going to come on here and have their opinions that this has been going on for a very long time. But if so, it was invisible then. And now what we're seeing is a clear, partial, polarized, and politically active press. We don't have a free press. We have an activist press. Okay? And another way to look at this, I mean, if you look at this from another perspective, you can see why you would want to call this what it really is: political propaganda. When you propagandize the news and you become a news commentary outlet instead of a news source, then what you are in some degree is propaganda. And some would say, Sage, you're propaganda. I am. I'm a preacher. I've been a propagandist my whole life. You know, I used to propaganda for Jesus. You know, propagandizing is simply trying to express yourself in a way that you want to guide or enlighten or what's the word I'm looking for? Influence the listener. Now, the news didn't used to try to influence the listener. The news would just deliver the news and let the viewer or the listener or the reader decide for himself what is right and what is wrong. But that doesn't exist in this world anymore. But the trust is still there in some cobweb form in the back of our minds. You know, we still believe that it must be true because we saw it on the news. And even though for some time now it's become painfully clear that the news is simply propaganda, it's simply sales of an idea. They're selling you a particular point of view. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that as long as you label that for what it is. But when political persuasion crosses over into real propaganda, you know, I said earlier I was a propagandist for Jesus. I'm being a little facetious because I believe the things that I'm telling you. As a preacher, when I tell you Jesus is the answer, I believe it. Jesus is the answer. You know, if I tell you the Constitution, you know, protects your right to keep and bear arms, that the Constitution guarantees your right to speech even if other people think it's hateful, that there is no illegal speech, really, in the Constitution. I believe that I'm telling you, right? But that's not propaganda. That's persuasive speech or preaching to some degree. When it becomes propaganda is when it's untrue. Like Baghdad Bob, who says, the Americans never made it past the beach. We have them contained. And meanwhile, you know, you hear shooting in the background and the guy's fixing to grab his rifle and run to the bunker because the Marines are descending on them, right? And the whole time he's going, no, they aren't. There's no Marines here in Baghdad. You know, it's very much like, you know, propaganda can also be to demoralize people, to make people give up hope. this negative propaganda is very much like Tokyo Rose. Tokyo Rose was a Japanese operative who had, I think, been born in America, or at least had lived in America, and had a very good grasp of the English language and the American culture, and was working on behalf of the Japanese in World War II. And they would broadcast into areas where they knew American soldiers would pick them up on the AM dial. And she would talk sweet to them, but then she would say things to them like, why are you here fighting, G.I. Joe, when the men with the flat feet who couldn't cut it as soldiers are making love to your wives at home? They're sitting in your chair and patting your children on the head while you're here involved in a war that you have no business being involved in. Go home, Joe. Go home. See, this is this demoralizing kind of the opposite of inspirational speech, angled at the enemy, your opposed, supposed enemy in a conflict. That's some of the darkest forms of propaganda. And I really believe that they've stooped to that level, that we're to that level where, even though, I'll give you an example of some propaganda. The left and all of those that have sided with the left, which includes big tech, they're not, I'm not telling you big tech people anything you don't know. You know what side you're on. You're not Republicans, okay? You're not even really Democrats. You're globalists, socialists, and some of you are communists. And, so these people are lined up with the press, working together as a revolutionary force in our country, okay? And the first step for them is to disarm old codgers like me with rifles. They don't want us to have rifles. That's why they're going after rifles and not handguns. Statistically, handguns are responsible for way more deaths, especially when you factor in suicide, than all other guns combined. That handguns are responsible for more deaths than long guns, multiple times over. Okay, so the left wants our rifles because wars aren't fought with pistols. If you bring a pistol to a rifle fight, you're going to lose, right? Especially beyond 7 paces or so. And it's the fact that they want our rifles shows what they want to do. This is a communist revolution. This is a takeover. And it's really well orchestrated. And we on the right, for as strong as we are, for as much training as we have, for as much resources as we possess, we are woefully behind the curve on planning and organizing. Because I think what you're seeing is a definite organization and a working together between the far left extreme socialist Democrats and the mainstream media. It's propaganda, not news. But yet we still kind of trust it on some archaic kind of genetic memory level, because when we were little, the news was somewhat accurate and trustworthy. And so this propaganda is actually a tool of the Civil War. It's a weapon of war. And I hesitate to say that people like me and Tim Pool and others are propagandists, because we're simply just reporting on what we see going down. And really, if I am a propagandist, it's a pro-constitutional propagandist, and I think you have to tell a lie for it to be truly propaganda. I don't know. I guess what's really getting under my skin right now are the lies they're telling about Trump and Trump supporters. That the mainstream media has labeled us all racists. They say Trump's a racist, even though they can't provide you any actual proof of racism on the part of Donald Trump. They'll just say everything he says. Well, that's because they've reinvented the language, and they could get offended by a foul smell on the wind, and they think it was you that did it. And maybe you did, and maybe you didn't. But you know what I mean? It's just like the left's going around like somebody farted all the time. They're offended by everything, right? And so they've reinvented the language to paint us all as racist. Really, they've taken the term racist and Nazi, and they've applied it to anybody who doesn't agree with the socialist, leftist, democratic, socialist, communist concept and ideology. See, they've actually taken all conservative ideologies from the First Amendment to the Second Amendment to the Constitution itself, and they've taken all of that together and said that collectively represents patriarchy, it represents racism culturally and institutionally, and therefore anyone who has those ideas is de facto racist, and we don't care if you're black. If you have those conservative ideas, you're still a racist. We don't care if you're married to an African American and you're a white man. Another thing they've done is taken anybody who is over 40 and white and automatically labeled you a racist unless you're actively participating in their cause. The only way the left doesn't qualify you as a racist, really regardless of your color, honestly, you're a racist if you're not on their side. You're a racist if you're not actively participating in working on their behalf. Which means they think 80% of America are racist. And their underlings have bought this ideology and they believe it passionately. And by dehumanizing us and labeling us as racist with no proof, with no evidence, other than they've decided our whole ideology that, white Christian America is racist. And then if you're a part of that, if you believe in family, if you believe in hard work, if you believe in country living, if you believe in guns and freedom of speech and church on Sunday, that makes you a racist. You're a racist if you believe that. And that's just in their head. It's who they are. It's how they think. And I'm done trying to change their mind. I'm just trying to wake you up to what's really going on here. That this is for a purpose. That this is a planned out mind game. That this is true mass brainwashing. Up to 20-30% of the population is buying this malarkey. Either because they're asleep or they're on board with it, or they were asleep and now they're on board with it. They bought the lie that we're all crazy and don't deserve to have our rights. We don't deserve to breathe. We don't deserve to live amongst them. And they've decided to eradicate us. It's clear in their language. This is an all-out move against the American way, against the way we've lived, against us everyday average Americans. That 20% is about to come after the other 80%. Now that doesn't sound like the odds are in their favor. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't bet on that poker hand. You only got a 20% chance of winning. You got an 80% chance of losing. I mean, if you just look at the raw math, but, it's not that simple. They do have power. They've infiltrated the government, the left, the communists, the socialists. They've infiltrated law enforcement on higher levels, especially on the federal level. They've infiltrated our politics, our House of Representatives and our Senates in the state and the state and national level. They've infiltrated the church on so many levels. They've infiltrated the business world. They own control of this very format I'm speaking on. And if they wanted to, they would just take me down. And they might. It would be tragic because, I've been trying to tell my life story on here. And I'm just all about trying to connect with my fellow man right now. But, I'm saying things I'm not allowed to say. Right? So let's see. I mean, in a world where the Constitution is the law of the land, I've said nothing wrong. And honestly, from a moral, ethical standpoint, I've said nothing wrong. I'm just telling the truth. If you don't think what I'm saying is the truth, you're brainwashed. Or you're one of those people who want to take the truth and flip it. That's the most irritating thing. That's the most frustrating thing. That's what has me battling with my own temper, right? And, from time to time, I scream at the television, right? Who doesn't? But the main thing that gets under my skin is the way that they can just state things as though they're fact and offer you no proof whatsoever of their statement. And the one I hate is that Donald Trump is a racist. They just say it like it's a fact. Like it's just, Donald Trump's a racist. Now, they've come to that conclusion because he's anti-illegal immigration. See, that's another way they make all of us a racist. If you think that we should have a border and that we should govern who comes in from other war-torn countries and other places where chaos is a way of life. People should be Americanized to a degree before they're even let in. Honestly, if I was running things, I'd want to see a little bit of patriotism and love for this country. You'd have to convince me why you want to come to this country. I mean, if somebody wants to date me as a single guy, and I ain't all that, but if they do, I'm going to ask them, what do you see in me? Why do you want to date me? So, why do they want to come here? Let's there's just no, if you believe that open borders are the right thing, then, we're at odds here. But just because I believe we should have a border and we should vet who comes into our country, and I don't care whether they're coming from England, I think it should be done on an individual basis. I think each person that wants to come into our country and live here with us should have a caseworker who it's his job to kind of follow them around and go, what kind of person are you? Are you the kind of person we want in our country? And I don't care what country they came from or what color they are. Right? I don't let you come in and be a member of my inner circle and my family and friends. I don't let you on my property and hang out in my house unless I know what kind of person you are. Are you a thief? Should I trust you? Do you have the same, moral, ethical ideas of right and wrong that I do? If not, I probably shouldn't let you into my inner sanctum. And our country is nothing more than our inner sanctum in the world. So, there's definitely a propaganda arm of the Socialist Democratic Party that is, the mainstream media. It's led by CNN and MSNBC. It's backed up by the social networks, Twitter and whatnot, right? And they're telling you things that aren't true. If Donald Trump was a racist, why did the NAACP, the National Association of Colored Persons, I think, why did they give him an award for helping African American small businessmen? They gave him a special award, the NAACP, because Donald Trump helped so many African American businessmen that were trying to come up in business during his career. Why was Donald Trump shown favorably in so many hip-hop records, right? They liked Donald Trump before he was president. No, what we have here is a communist, socialist ideology that has infiltrated key elements of our country, and they're attempting to turn America into something it was never designed or intended to be, a socialist utopia. To do that, you've got to get rid of the Constitution. I mean, you guys need to realize that that's their intention. They want to undermine and destroy the Constitution. They want it to just go away. We don't need that Constitution thing. That's why they're attacking your speech, your gun rights. Your right to search and seizure is another thing that's coming next. They'll just come in your house and search and look around because they don't like the cut of your jib and the things that you're saying. See, personal property rights, that's another thing that's got to go. Like, you can't have personal property. You're like a ward of the state in socialism. You live in government housing and you get to live there as long as you're a good boy. And if you're a really good boy, you might get to move up to a little bigger apartment. Right? And if you give us a hard time, we'll put you down in the basement in that janitor's closet on the cot, next to the mousetrap. So, I think it's clear. At this point, if you come on the comment section and you want to call me divisive or polarizing, or you want to claim that I'm some kind of Nazi, or if you haven't picked a side by now, you're not just asleep anymore at this point. Honestly, if you can't see the truth in what I'm saying, you're either one of them, you're either a communist comrade in disguise, you're a troll and you're trolling me from the other side, right? Or you're just plain stupid. Really, how much evidence do you need that this is going on? How much more evidence do you need to see? Do you need to see tanks in the street before you realize we're in a civil war? Is that what it takes? Right now, it's a war of words, and it's a war of economic power. Soon you won't be able to bank unless you sign with the communists. Soon you won't be able to get a job unless your social profile says the right things. Soon you won't be able to participate. This is why I encourage you to learn how to live life outside of the beast system. Learn how to make your own food. I know how. I just got to get the infrastructure together. Mainly right now, I'm working on water issues. Water, it's always the breath of life, right? And but I suggest that you learn how to garden, learn how to sustain yourself, work up a barter network, get to know your neighbors, get out of the city, because in the city they have total and absolute control of you already. And get out here where it's a nice rifle shot to the end of your driveway. Know what I'm saying? Give yourself some space to breathe and some room to grow some food and keep some animals. We are probably more than likely in the end times, if you're a Christian and you believe that way. And I don't push my beliefs on other people other than to say this: if we're not, then we're definitely going through what's already happened in so many other countries, a socialist, communist takeover. And they have a script. I'm just laying out to you that they're playing the script. They're just playing the script. We're in this. You can't trust the media. Soon you won't be able to trust videos because of deep fake videos, technology that allows them to take and put words in anyone's mouth or put their face on someone else's body and make them do things that they didn't actually do, and they'll show that as proof. And this is going to go back and forth. I don't know how it's going to play out. I suspect California will cede from the Union. I suspect that Texas may close its borders to the south, north, east, and west. That Texas might isolate itself. That's why I've come here. I've come here because, I love Texas, and you can bury me in Texas. But, it makes a lot of sense tactically from where we're at right now. This is the last place on earth they'll be, coming for your guns. They'll come for your guns every place else before it happens here in Texas. And, if they try to invade Texas, there's a lot of Texans that'll stand. We are more like-minded and together and on the same page in Texas, I think, than any other place. And that includes all of us, people of every color. I was very upset to see the El Paso people be so awful to Trump, But I think, for the most part, Hispanics in Texas are, once you're either second generation or you've been here for a while in Texas. Texas is infectious. If you move here, you'll become a Texan. It'll absorb you. You know what I mean? The culture here is very powerful. So, anyway, I just wanted to spend some time talking about the Mockingbird media, talking about the fact that we are in a civil war, and there seems to be no end in sight to the escalation. And the rhetoric and the propaganda is getting more and more difficult to deal with. And so this video is running kind of long, but tell me what you think in the comments section. When was the last time you trusted the press? When was the last time you saw the news as reporting and not as opinion? Give your opinion in the comments section. And God save our republic.